Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to a brand new episode of this podcast. This week, I wanted to introduce and talk to Bradley, who is from Action Coach. I got it wrong in the podcast, spoiler alert. But he is a localized business coach. He works for quite a reputable brand of coaches that are global, which is great. And it was great to be given the opportunity. So thank you so much for him for joining me for this hour conversation. I really, really appreciate it. And I think it was valuable. And I'm really, really glad that you guys have been taking some value and enjoying the podcast, with those who have been reaching out and thanking me and saying they have been enjoying the podcast. And also, I'm going to put this into an intro as well. They will be on Spotify and etc. soon. I need to get my ass into gear and get that done. But thank you so much for watching. I'm going to let the wonderful guest today talk a little bit more about what he does and why he does it. But we will see you very, very soon.
Hi, Carlton. It's great to finally catch up with you. You're a very busy man doing some fantastic work for Salisbury businesses and helping everybody to get the word out. So it's great that we finally managed to catch up. So my name is Brad Wright. I'm the owner of Action Coach in Salisbury. Action Coach is a global franchise business that helps business owners to achieve personal and business success through business re-education. So we help business owners understand the things that they need to learn, and we provide help and support along the way as they develop as business owners and become very successful at achieving what they want to through business. And I'm originally from the Northeast, from the beautiful county of Northumberland, just south of the Roman Wall. And I grew up there, originally born in a place called Corbridge, which is famous for having a Roman fort. That, in fact, one of my grandfathers was part of the excavation team. But for the last 12 or so years, we've lived in the village of Winterslow, which is quite close to Salisbury, about 9 miles away.
Lovely place. I hate to jump in on this intro, but Winterslow, lovely.
It's great.
I was there for a long time. Part of my childhood was there, so lovely place. Just wanted to jump in.
I did not know that about
for those
you, Colin.
So yes, indeed. So it's a learning experience, and that's why I love the podcast. But please carry on. I won't jump in. I just want to jump in and say how lovely Winterslow is. Maybe not today, considering it's absolutely well. I don't know what it's doing in Winterslow if you're still there, but it's very dry, very miserable, and very rainy today.
Yeah, I don't know if it's good truffle hunting weather, but apparently Bentley Woods is a bit of a truffle hunting hotspot. I see the occasional forager when I go out for a dog walk, coming through the woods with a basket full of exotic mushrooms. I don't think they're medicinal mushrooms. I think they're actually culinary mushrooms. So I think
how exciting.
Things to eat rather than things to lose track of the day with. But yeah, apparently it's famous for that, which I didn't realize until quite recently. So I grew up in Northumberland, one of 4 boys, and that was fun. Very sporty childhood, and always very active and very outdoorsy, which led me to join the Royal Navy when I was 23, after spending 6 years in chemical engineering with the Kleenex people who make exotic things like toilet tissue and paper handkerchiefs. But I did 6 or 7 years as a production chemical engineer with them, and then joined the Royal Navy to do 2 things. One was to have more adventure in my life, because as a young man I was going into the factory at 6:30 in the morning on a blazing summer's day, and it was like being a submariner, because you wouldn't see the daylight for the whole shift. And then you'd come home and go out and do a few things and then repeat the process. And I thought there's got to be a bit more to life than working in a factory for the rest of my life. So I joined the Royal Navy when I was 23, which was quite late. Normally people will join around sort of 18, 19. And I trained as a engineer officer. So the second reason for joining the Navy was, firstly, the adventure, but secondly was computers were really just beginning to come into business life at that stage, and I'd been involved in doing a lot of trials with Kimberly-Clark, developing new products. And we had this this computer, which probably had less memory than you've got in your watch, but it used to run this big production plant where we were producing paper tissue at about 2,500 meters a minute in a sort of 4 meter wide sheet. And there was this one guy who could control the computer, and he was an ex-Navy guy, and he was like God. Everybody had to prostrate themselves in front of him to get him to do anything at all with the machine, because it was all machine code back in those days, and if you couldn't code properly, you had no idea. So you had to bring him a box of biscuits.
You couldn't do anything. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't sort of what you see is what you get, drag and drop, like it is a lot of the time now. So if you needed anything done, you had to take this guy a box of biscuits, and he used to really lord it over you, because he was the keeper of the code. And he'd write about 6 lines of code. You'd get one measurement out of him if you were lucky, in an 8-hour shift. So it was a funny thing. So I decided that it would be good to get into this emerging new world. This was back in 1985, 86. So I joined the Royal Navy in 1987, and I trained as a weapon engineer officer. So a weapon engineer officer is a mixture of a whole bunch of things. So it's electrical engineering, control engineering, and then the application of that in a military context. So it covers everything from building and maintaining and operating global data and voice communication systems so that you can communicate with other people on land, sea, and in the air. Managing all of the weapons systems, which means all of the sensors that tell you whether there's something outside of the ship. So that could be below the surface, a submarine, could be on the surface, which would be a ship, or it could be a UFO, which we're seeing a lot in the news at the moment. They're all over the place. If you're on YouTube, you'll notice that there's UFOs everywhere. So looking after all the sensors and then the weapon systems on top of that, and adding into that all of the control systems to make these things move. So if you can imagine something like a gun on a ship, it's got to be able to rotate and elevate and point very precisely in space from something that's not staying still. You know, the ship's moving through the water, and the sea could be quite rough. So you have to learn how to survey in the weapon systems from the ship as it's being built. So all the things that you see surveyors doing out on the roads, whether they're with theodolites and young lads with sticks, with lots of lines on, getting levels and things. So you do all of that. You learn all of those skills to build the systems into the ship, so you know exactly where everything is. And then you have to mechanically and electronically align them, and then you have to test and tune and maintain them. So very, very comprehensive engineering training that really fitted with what I wanted to achieve, because I was very much fascinated by all things, and it gave me an opportunity to get my very busy brain into a whole load of areas of interest.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, it's really interesting. And I don't normally let people go off on I'll use the term tangents. I don't think that was a tangent, but I don't normally let people necessarily go off unless I think it's valuable. But I think what a lot of that kind of metrics is shown here, and that's why I wanted to explain a little bit about your background, is because so many of us have not one thing we've done, right? Like, I'm very early in my journey, but I've still done retail, newspaper round, now production company, game development, wanted to be a CBT therapist for a while, trained to be a counsellor for a bit, etc. Right? So all among that, I'm just trying a load of stuff. And I think one of the main things that a lot of young entrepreneurs and people who, many of you found this as well, and I'll throw back to you in a minute, but I think that the main thing that people don't necessarily understand is people go, oh, how did you find that thing that you love, right? How do you find that passionate thing that you're like, oh, I love this thing and I'm going to do it for the rest of my life, in theory, right? Or to the day I hate it. How does, I mean, my simple answer is try a load of things until you find it, right? But have you found that there was like this calling for you to now be like work with actual coach and mentor those business owners and help business owners because of your previous experience? Or was it always something which you were like, yeah, at this point in my life, I'm going to do this?
Yeah, it's a great question. And also it's something that's very, very much pertinent to people at a particular stage of life that you're at right now. And that continues probably up until you're about 40. So there is a way to accelerate that process and put some structure around it, which when you understand that makes life a lot less trial and error and a lot less frustrating. But I think what I've learned on my journey is that we're all given a program of some sort when we're born. So it's a mixture of all kinds of different things, but it's, the time of the year that you're born, and particular characteristics that you're hardwired with. So one of the things that we do with our coaching clients to help them understand how to communicate with other people and how to approach marketing and sales is we talk about 4 dominant personality styles. And there's a number of different models that you can find on this, but the one that we use a lot is DISC profile. So there's 4 broad types of personalities. There's a dominant personality, which is very direct and very action oriented. There's a what we call a high I. It's very people focused and chatty, tend to talk a lot. I'm quite high I. Then you've got steadies, which is the S of DISC. So the steady people don't really like change. They're very happy doing the same sort of thing every day. You'll have friends like this who, have got mums and dads, lived in the same house for 40 years, had one job for 30 years, very content just doing their thing. And then you've got the C's, the conscientious people who are really into detail, and they tend to be accountants and analysts and people who tend to be quite introverted and very detail oriented. So there's those things that start to shape what kind of work you're going to be most suitable for, and what is going to give you motivation and is going to give you satisfaction in life. So a great thing to do that we do with all of our coaching clients is we go through an alignment process to accelerate that journey that you're talking about there. So first of all, what are you naturally fit to do according to your DISC profile? How have you had to adapt that based on the work that you're doing right now? And is there a big difference between your natural program and the program that you have to wear when you go to work? Because if there is a big difference between the two, it can be very stressful, and it can cause you to derail if you have to. Let's say, for example, my wife, love her, she's a very high I. So if you've got over a 90% I, or any of the other characteristics, it becomes a need. So it's not just something to be aware of. It becomes so incredibly compelling that if you don't have that route for that I to be satisfied, or that C to be satisfied, it can distress you and causes you to bottle something up, and then eventually it comes out. And for a high I, they tend to lash out verbally, and that damages their interpersonal relationships, which is catastrophic because they're all about people and being part of a social team. So understanding your DISC profile and the DISC profile of others that you enjoy being around is a good thing to do. And then the other element that is worth considering when you look at what's a good fit for your career is there's a great book that what's his name? We had him, Wyatt Woodsmall, and his wife wrote, Marilyn Woodsmall, called People, Power, Patterns. And Wyatt Woodsmall was at the left-hand end of neuro-linguistic programming. So he and others have studied through the language that people use, the different paradigms that we the models that we have in our brains that govern how we see the world. So some people are motivated away from fear and loss and anything like that, and others are moved towards vision. So you get people who are very visionary and people who are very fearful, and there's about 9 other different patterns like that that govern how we see the world and what makes us happy. So when you're looking for a career, if you are somebody who gets a lot of their motivation and satisfaction from being sociable and chatty and spontaneous, you're not going to be a great choice for the bank, because the bank wants you to come in and do the same thing and be meticulous and follow rules. So somebody who's a very high I,
I'm not going to work very well in the bank.
Somebody who's very high I,
it's not going to happen.
They could bounce around from lots of different jobs because people will think that they're goofing off and they're not paying attention to what needs to be done. But in a hospitality role, they might be ideal, or in a sales role, they could also be pretty good. But there's caveats around that, because sales needs to have a lot of process as well as that extrovert characteristic as well. So I think the journey begins when you're born, so you get those fixed patterns, and then as you go through school, you get into that nature and nurture thing. So the nature and nurture, the people that you surround yourself with, and the mores and the values and the the environment that you grow up in, that begins to form your beliefs and your values. So by the time you get to teenage, you've kind of decided that you want to be an astronaut or a soldier or a videographer or whatever it is. I mean, when did you decide that you were going to do the things that you do?
I mean, for me, for as long as I can remember, I've always been in a position where I want to work for myself, right? That's always been a goal, so to speak, right? How and what, didn't know at that time. From a very young age, I was like, I want to work for myself. I don't want to work for someone else. That's not something I want to do. I haven't really, for as long as I can remember, I've always had an issue and I've always questioned authority in every single scenario which you would think. So bosses, teachers, etc. Not in a I don't appreciate and I don't respect rules kind of way, but in a why does this rule exist and how can we do it better? Oh wait, no, I can't make that decision because it's above my paycheck, basically. In a more job role, basically. So for me, I wanted to build something for me that allowed me to give my team and also me the chance to completely change how we react and how we actually tackle problems. And I'm not religiously like, you have to follow these rules because that's what the company rules are. No. Like, if you see a way to resolve a problem and make a client's life better, then do it, right? If it costs the company more money, okay, fine, right? We'll have a conversation about why that may not be necessarily optimal, but in that moment, it's better to fix that problem. And, I mean, but in answer to your initial question, I mean, I guess in some ways I always knew, but I also never knew, right? Because for me, my background's in game development. Those who don't know, I made gaming creator content from about the age of 12 to about the age of 19, and I did that for a very, very long time. Loved it. Got to a point where I could not really grow creatively with it, so I stopped. And I was like, right, well, what do I want to do now? Around the same time, I got into photography. Then one thing led to another, and then I became a more corporate-related videographer because I missed the idea of creating video content. And then one thing led to another. I then started promoting businesses more, etc., etc., etc. And the rest is history. But I think the main thing that someone could take from that is I kind of knew it would be along the lines of presenting or content creation or something, some level of that. And a question I was going to ask you, and I have to tell a little story for the question to make sense. So bear with me. But for a long time, I'm going to say this to people, and people are going to listen to this and go, "No way, that's no way is that true." But you talk about extrovert and introvert in your, a couple of minutes ago. And for me, for a long time, I'm very extroverted now, but I've developed that. It's not, I started out as the most introverted person you'll ever know, right? If you met Colton probably about 5 to 7 years ago, I was probably very, very introverted. And people ask me, oh, well, how did you get to the point where you're really confident, you can talk to people, you're quite good people? I hope, or I believe I'm quite a good people person in that respect, And the simple answer is I've ran communities in my life through video games and etc. So that kind of requires you to be a leader of some description and deal with people's problems, especially when you're not getting paid, especially when they're basically hormonal / emotional wrecks, teenagers. As you can appreciate, some controllers may or may not have got thrown through Windows at some point, or the equivalent on PC. Anyway, so you have to develop good people skills to be able to be in a position to deal with those. Also in retail, there's situations, and I know that some of the guys who work with me do listen to the podcast because they edit it for me, so they're going to be smiling at this, but because both of them work in retail as well. In retail, there's a lot of situations where you have an idea of what you want to say to this customer, but you can't say it because you would be in lots of trouble if you did, and in some cases you might if it's a way out, but that's not a recommendation. And the point, and I'll come to the question in a moment, but how did I develop the ability to switch was simply through pushing myself to talk to people, go outside my comfort zone, try to fix problems because I saw no one else doing it. It's as simple as that. And I think my question comes to, for those people who are sat there listening to the podcast now or do listen to the podcast now and are in a position where they know from maybe their disc like reality, like their idea of what their disc, like where their position in their disc, which you just described was, but also where they want to go, career-wise, kind of makes them feel as if they need to be an extrovert, but at the moment they're an introvert. Really, 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 really hard an introvert. How would you recommend people actually kind of transition to going to that, to be more extroverted and to be more comfortable as well with being extroverted?
Yeah, I think the starting point is always to understand what your disc profile is. It's pretty inexpensive to do. I mean, if people listening to the podcast want to find out what theirs is, they can hit me up with a DM and we can talk about how to do that. But the first thing is to understand where you sit, because you might have a belief that you're not very extroverted, but that might not be real. And so when you get your disc profile, it might tell you something different. You could have been conditioned to believe a certain series of things about yourself by the people that you surround yourself with. It's like you hear people saying to their children, "Oh, you're not very good at maths, or you're clumsy." And so if enough people say that to you for long enough, you begin to believe that that's true for you. So the first thing is to actually understand what the reality is, and that's data-led rather than perception. So always make decisions based on facts. And then in terms of the DISC report, the one that we use quite a lot is DISC and Motivators. So you can share that report with people that are important to you in terms of business or personal relationships, and ideally get a 360, get the people around you to do theirs as well. And then there's a worksheet in the process where you can understand a couple of things that you can do maybe each quarter, because it's personal change. So it's not going to be, let's do a lot of things today, because you're going to fall flat on your face. But you just start with one or two different things that will move you in that direction. So it might be giving better eye contact, making encouraging noises when somebody's talking to you. The going back to the computer guy in Kimberly Clark back in the day, we used to say the definition of an extrovert computer programmer is he looks at your shoes when he's talking to you. So good eye contact comes from a little bit of self-confidence in you, and feeling comfortable in your own skin. So understanding how you're made up and understanding that there's no good or bad. When you do a DISC profile, it's not that your score's different or better than anybody else. It just is what it is. So it's about self-awareness and self-confidence, and then developing some of the techniques that you need to work on being more accessible to more people. So for example, a high I who chats too much might not realize that 15 minutes have gone by and they're still talking. And somebody else will be, saying, is this person ever going to shut up? So for a high I, one of those behaviors might be to introduce something like they count on the hand, or they record a conversation like this, and with a stopwatch afterwards to go through, right, how long was Brad talking? How long was Carlton talking? Crikey, it was 80% Brad. Brad, you're talking too much. You need to address that. So similarly with the other personality styles, the first thing is to understand what you are, and then you can begin to work on one or two things that are going to help you to be more effective in your communication with others. That could be listening, and it could be talking.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And I think, for me, it's one of those things where, and what the main thing I took from that was the self-awareness aspect of it, right? Because I think once you understand, it reminds me of a time when I first went on BBC Wiltshire radio interview pre-COVID, went into the studio, was really nervous, and the only thing I said to myself was, look, learn to stop talking, right? Because I probably am, I haven't done a DISC report, but I probably am a high I, right? Just knowing myself, knowing how much I can talk. When you explained it, I was like, okay, I'm either the D, okay, maybe not, okay, maybe, yeah, I'm definitely the I. In that respect. So for me, it was one of those things where in that radio interview, I was like, yes, they want to hear from me, but they only want to hear from me in bite-sized chunks, right? So listen to the question, answer the question, shut up, right? Because for me, if I don't do that, I will just talk, right? And that can be a good thing in a radio context or a podcast context, as long as you can turn it off and turn it on, right? Because Otherwise, what happens is, and what we'll probably find is it's probably more 60-40 in regards to like who's actually talking in this podcast, which is fine. I would rather, to be honest with you, the guest talks more in a podcast than I do, because there's so many other bits of content that I put out if you want to hear from me, right? You don't need this platform or this episode to necessarily be about me. It should be about the guest, because the only time you're going to hear from the guest in my context is through this medium. Right, so I mean, I was doing some. People ask me, do you do research on your guests, and do you ask your guests to, do you prep them with questions, etc. And some of the time I do, some of the time I don't. And the podcast has kind of evolved. When I first started it, I was like, right, these are the religious questions I'm going to ask you, and it's going to be like this, and it's very military based in that respect. And then I got to a point where I was like, actually, I'm kind of hurting the podcast's flow by doing that. So as I did it more, and as I got more comfortable with the idea of interviewing, and I got more comfortable with asking difficult questions, and establishing an understanding and helping people feel comfortable with also asking those questions as well, because it's part of your job as the interviewer, in my opinion anyway, to help your interviewee to feel comfortable in the situation. Otherwise, you're not going to get the best response out of them. You're just not. That's reality. But anyway, so for me, I've kind of changed how I adapt the podcast to be more of a conversation with some structure built around it. And before we started, I mentioned to you that I did some very, very, very quick research, and that's the reason why I do quick research just before I do the podcast. Because number one, it's stressed, it's just simply a time management thing. But also number two, it'll be fresh in my mind. But also, I'll only get enough time to find the stuff I care about, pretty much. Right? So I'm not going to spend a lot of time knowing everything about you, because that's the point of this podcast. The point is to find out stuff about you, and what piques my interest will hopefully pique someone else's interest. So that's why I ask the questions. And the quote I want to quote you. Hopefully I don't get this wrong, because I watched the video like half an hour ago, so I probably are going to get it wrong. But it was something along the lines of, one of your goals at Active Coach is to double the economy in Salisbury, or something along those lines. And the question that I have for you is, how do you, or indirectly you, so it doesn't actually have to necessarily be you specifically, but how do you plan to do that, and what actions do you feel need to happen, Salisbury specifically, for that to happen?
Great question. So first thing is just to clarify, it's Action Coach rather than Active Coach, because Active Coach is probably a different company that does physical fitness. So the reason we're called Action Coach is because for anything that you learn to add value to your life, you've then got to implement it. So if you read a book and you get a brilliant idea about how to manage a podcast, if you then teach that idea to somebody else, then it becomes internalized and it becomes part of Carlton. So if you just read the book and then read another book and read another book, you get some of that goes in subliminally. But if you take away a couple of action points away from the things that you're reading, you maybe make a couple of notes, then you become more successful more quickly. So Action Coach is about learning and doing. And so the two ways that we do that is we do that in one-to-one coaching, where it's very bespoke, and we get into the business that you're in, and we look at the problems that you're facing and the opportunities that you've got in front of you for the next week or the next fortnight. And we do some coaching about decisions or mindset or business skills, whatever it might be. And at the end of every session, we agree the things that you're going to do in between times. So when we finish the session today, Carlton, your 3 actions for the next week will be A, B, C, and D. And as it comes up to the next session, if you've goofed off and you've got a challenge with self-discipline, or you've been distracted by a squirrel, it's a bit like Weight Watchers. You're walking past the chip shop, but tomorrow night you're going to be on front of the scales in front of all the girls. So you don't have the fish and chips because you've got to weigh in tomorrow. So that accountability helps you to maintain and develop that self-discipline, because it's like a muscle. So Action Coach, either group coaching or one-to-one coaching, is about a transfer of knowledge, helping you to make sense of the situation that you find yourself in, and then taking positive action each week, each quarter, each year to move you in the direction of your goals. And when you start off, the goals might be smaller, because it's a bit like going to the gym. You can lift some weights, but you can't lift big, heavy weights. As you get used to the process and the discipline, and you learn the techniques of lifting the weights, then you start to be able to lift 2 or 3 times your body weight. So it's the same with what we do. So how do we double the economy in Salisbury in the next 3 to 5 years? Very simply, by business re-education. So Action Coach's mission is world abundance through business re-education. So that sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? Because it's world abundance. Well, any vision worth having has to be so big that you can't achieve it in your lifetime. It needs to be a 100-year goal. If it's, touch 15 businesses by next Tuesday, that's not a vision, that's a to-do list. So a vision has got to be something that enrolls and inspires other people to get behind it, like, solving cancer or something like that. So world abundance through business re-education, and my chunk of the world is the area around Salisbury. So my direct marketing area that I'm really interested in working with all the businesses in runs from Marlborough in the north to Fordingbridge in the south, and then from Devizes at the left-hand side across to Winchester. So within that group of, within that part of the UK, there's 10,000 businesses. So I want to work with maybe 3% of businesses within that area and double those businesses or put a 0 on their profits in the next 3 to 5 years. So how do we do that? Well, the way that we do that is we work predominantly with people on their marketing and sales that allows the business to then grow. And as the business grows, they then need to buy more products and services from other people, and they need more people in their business in order to deal with the extra amount of customers or the amount of goods and services that they're selling. So typically in businesses that we work with, they will double, quadruple, 10 times in that space of time, 3 to 5 years, sometimes an awful lot quicker. And if you look at my LinkedIn from Friday, I posted a video where there was one of our clients was reporting 489% growth. So most people, when they do their business plans every year, they'll look at what they did last year because it's rear view mirror stuff. It sort of happened to them. They weren't really deliberate about it. And they'll say, well, what are we going to try and do next year? And they'll put a little bit on because they haven't got the confidence, their internal beliefs and their processes within their business prevent them. There's a little voice just says to them, don't be ridiculous, Carlton. You can't double your business in the next 6 months. So you just say, well, I'll try and grow by 10% or 7% or whatever. And then you'll start talking to yourself about, well, yeah, the economy's a bit knackered and everybody's locked down. And, I've talked to a lot of my mates and nobody's got any money. And you start to talk yourself out of the forecast that you originally built. So what we show people with the presentations that we put together, all of which you can attend for free. We do a 6 steps and a 5 ways and a bunch of other things that are worth looking at. But we show you how to achieve exponential growth by working on the 5 levers that drive your gross profit. So the 5 levers that you have to deliberately attend to every quarter when you plan the activity in your business are as follows. The number one thing is the number of leads that you're getting into your business. So how many people know about what you do and understand what it is and why it might help them? So, people start off as suspects. They might be somebody that could buy what you're selling. Then when you qualify them a little bit, they become a prospect. And then the first time they buy, they become a shopper. They only become a customer when they buy from me more than once. So we move people up that loyalty ladder, and our clients do the same. Once you understand that process and you understand that you have to buy all of your customers, then you can begin to put deliberate strategies in place to increase the number of leads that you get. So number one is leads. The second thing that you have to work on is your conversion rate. So now that you've got a bunch of people who understand what you do and are interested in what you're offering the marketplace, how many of those people do you convert from being interested to becoming a customer? So that's your sales process. So your percentage conversion rate is a key metric in your business, and 99% of businesses don't measure it. They don't know how many leads they get. They don't know where the hell they came from, and they've got no idea how many they convert into customers. So getting those 2 things right is really important. And then the next 2 things in that marketing engine are the number of transactions, how many times people buy from you in a year. So if they come on, Brunton Media's shown they do 1 interview, that's a single transaction. If you do a monthly podcast, then that's 12 times. So ideally, every business needs to have a number of products or all of its products that allow people to buy more than once. So repeated transactions is a key element of the 5 ways. The average pound sale is the next one. So the number 4 is the average pound sale. So how much do people typically spend when they buy your stuff? And we've got strategies for all of these. But for example, with leads, we've got about 70 different strategies that we teach people around lead generation, 60 or so around conversion rate, similarly with number of transactions and average pound sale. An example of a strategy for increasing your average pound sale is, would you like fries with that? You know, McDonald's, you're going for a burger and they upsell you on the fries. And if you go into Burger King and they say, oh, it's Carlton, he always does the large fries, we'll get them on onion rings this time. So how do you add to your average value sale? And what strategies are you going to implement this quarter to increase that number? And then the last one is your percentage gross profit. So your percentage gross profit can come from reducing the cost of goods sold. So are you being really keen on the prices of things that you're paying for the materials or the services that you're using to deliver the thing that you're selling on? So looking at all of your monthly outgoings and going through that in some detail. A lot of businesses that we talk to when we first begin to work with them, at worst, they'll get a set of accounts every 12 months and the year happens to them. At the end of the year, they say, well, did we make any profit? Oh, no, we didn't. Or they might get a quarterly set of accounts. But again, that's too late. You know, you need to be proactively managing those 5 levers so that the profit that you make is deliberately, you're setting out deliberately to achieve it and you're in control along the way. And it's like any journey. If you aren't measuring where you are along the journey, you can't speed up.
Yeah, you have no idea. You have no idea where you are. Is that you have no idea where you are, and there's a lot that I resonate with that, and we could talk for hours on this, but I think the main things for me are, again, like for me, I've always said, minimum, I'm going to double my profit from last year, right? Now, some people go, that's crazy, Colin. That's ridiculous. There's no way, right? When you're earning like small amounts of money and just starting out, that's easy, right? Or perceived easy, right? But for me, I see them as the same, right? Let's say, for argument's sake, I turned over, when I wasn't full-time, $5,000 a year. Okay, cool, fab. Then I want to go to 10 grand. Okay, cool. But then I want to go to 20 grand, then 40 grand, then 80 grand, then so on, right? But for me, the mindset change or the development and the growth change is identical, because all I'm doing is changing my mindset and changing how much I feel my service and value is to that client per client. And there's a lot of parallels with what you just said there as well. But the question, I think, is, the question there is, at what role do you feel it's the business owner's responsibility to understand what their value is and then be able to, because arguably I would say, and this is kind of 2 questions in one, I would always strive for a goal that is ridiculous to achieve, because what if I hit half that goal, right? Let's say I want to turn over, I don't know, let's say I want to go from 10,000 to 100,000. Some would say that's 10 times amount of growth. That's ridiculous. Okay, but let's say I don't do that. The goal of this point, the point of putting that goal there is not so I hit the 100,000 in the first year, right? The goal is, so what if I hit 50k, right? That's a 5 times exponential set of growth. Okay, but I'm only able to do that because I targeted for 100k. And I pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, and then I got to the 50k. Now, just for clarity's sake, these are made up numbers, right? I just pulled them out of the air. But I'll re-ask you the question: what role do you feel the business owner themselves? Because the majority of people who listen to the podcast are solo business owners or very small team business owners like myself. They resonate with me because of that reason, right? So what role do you think it's in their mindset more than it's actually in, what their service is and how their service is and their actual product or whatever it is they actually sell, right? Whatever the thing they actually make profit.
I'm gonna teach you the formula for success in life and business and everything else. So if you've got a piece of paper and you're listening to the podcast, you want to write this down. It's 3 words, so it's pretty easy. So the formula for life success, the simple version, is B as in BE, times do equals have. So that is how you get everything in life. Doesn't matter whatever it is. It's the pretty girl or the boy that you want to be with. It's the Maserati. Doesn't matter whatever it is. So let's just break that down. So everything is created twice. It's first created in your mind as an idea or a dream or a something that you want, and then secondly you have to materialize it. So Stephen Covey in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is a great book if you haven't read it, talks about beginning with the end in mind. So when you approach your business and you say, okay, how was this year? The first thing you reflect on the year, right? How did last year go? It was rubbish. It was lockdown. I made £50,000 and, I'm not going to get to the beach or get the Maserati if I carry on doing what I've always done. So you set you get your dreams solid first. So we have a process which is called IVVM: idealization, visualization, verbalization, and materialization. So the first thing is to imagine what your perfect future life would look like. Who are the people you want to meet, the places you want to go, what the things you want to have. So that's the idealization. So you can be or do anything that you want. We're unlimited in what we're capable of, but we have to, first of all, be clear on what it is that we want, and then we need a process to get there. So you idealize it, and then you visualize it in your mind. You believe it's true and you see it in your mind's eye. So you will have seen, before you got into what you're doing now, a model of what you're doing now, you running these podcasts, making videos and all that sort of thing. Then the verbalization. So part of the B is that life is a mirror. So we become limited by what we think we're capable of. So there's a process that we teach when we do a full day thing called Business Rich. Was 2 days actually. And there's a good example of this. Brad Sugars, who's our chairman and founder, advertised the job, and he put it in the paper for 2 salaries. One was $250,000 a year and the other was $25,000. Exactly the same job. And he had 100 people applied for the £25,000 a year job, and 3 people applied for the $250,000 job. Same job. So the only reason that people didn't apply for the 250K job was because they didn't think they were worth 250K. Even though the job was specified, it's going to do these things. You could look at that and say, can I do that? Yes, I can, but I'm going to apply for the 25 grand because I don't think I'm worth $250,000. So in terms of working on the B, you have to get your belief system developed. And the way that you do that is through daily affirmations, and ideally 3, 4, 5 times a day. So the most important things that we say to ourselves, the most important things we say are the things we say to ourselves about ourselves when we're by ourselves. So if you have a series of affirmations that represent the Carlton of the future, I am confident, I am successful, I am becoming a multi-millionaire, producer, whatever those things are. And we use words like becoming or in the process of, because if you say them out loud and it sticks in your throat a little bit, that's your heart is telling you that you don't really quite believe that yet. So using becoming or in the process of is a bridge to get you to that next level. So when you write your affirmations down, and we recommend that you put 20 together, then you will find the ones that don't quite trip off the tongue, and that signposts where you've got to do the work. So that's your verbalization, and then materialization is what you get at the end. So going back to that formula, B times do equals have. Once you understand the things that you want to have, the working on your B takes time because it's human change. It's rewiring your programs inside, and that takes a little bit longer. So what we always recommend that you do, and it makes logical sense when you think about it, is you start to work on the do. So let's give an example. So what I want to have is I want a medal for running the Clarendon Marathon from Salisbury to Winchester. So how do I get that Clarendon Marathon medal? That's a mouthful, isn't it? On a Saturday afternoon. So to have the things that a marathon runner has, you've got to do the things that a marathon runner does. Makes sense, doesn't it, when you put it in terms of a physical context? So what would you do to become a marathon runner? Because you aren't one at the moment. You're a couch potato. This is not you personally, obviously. You're a couch potato. You've not run since school, and you've got no idea what that would look like. So you have to start breaking down that task. So we have another universal principle that we teach, which is leverage, or leverage, as we would say. There's two elements to that. One is divide to multiply. So break a big job into small bits and then, eat the elephant a bite at a time. Many hands make light work, that kind of principle. And the other leverage is like what you do for a living, where you work once, get paid many times, because you record a podcast and it goes out to millions of people around the world potentially. So you start off with the thing that you want to have, and then you find out what you have to do to become the person that you want to become that has that stuff. And if you don't go through that B times do equals have, it's like snakes and ladders. You slide down the snake. And the example I'll give on that is lottery winners. So somebody goes down to the newsagents on a Friday afternoon, or whenever they do the lottery, I don't do it. They buy a ticket and the roller ball, or whatever the hell it's called, comes in, and they win 50 million quid. What happens to that money? It slips through their hands like a drunken sailor, because they haven't become the person who has 50 million pounds worth of wealth. So that formula, that B times do equals have, is the true fact if you look around you. So what people say about, setting a goal to become a millionaire is it's not about the £1 million or the $1 million at the end. It's the person that you'll become along the way. The things that it's like Dr. Seuss, the people you see, the places you'll go, the things you'll learn is the journey, and having that mission is so important to your self-confidence, your motivation every day, and how you approach the world, every day. If you've got no mission, you've got no belief, you're not going anywhere, then you're just drifting, you're like a leaf in the wind.
Yeah, absolutely. And the main quote that I hopefully don't get this wrong, that I really resonate and really feel is a reflection of that is, you can give a man a fish, right, and feed him for one day. You can teach a man to fish and feed him for a lifetime. And the principle there is, you can use the term of money, you can use the term of anything, a skill, whatever. If you know how to make £1 million, you can make £1 million whenever you need £1 million.
Yeah, for sure.
If you're handed £1 million, you have no idea how to make it. You have no idea how to make that much money. You have no idea. So the reason why, like, people go, oh, I want to win the lottery. I'm like, I don't want to win the lottery. I want to make more than I could win from the lottery, because then I have the skill set to know how to make money when I need to, which arguably is the most freedom you can have, right? It's the question of, like, why are you working for yourself, for example? Why are you doing what you want to do? I'm in a very fortunate position where I can literally decide to take the day off the morning of if there's nothing important on, for example, right? And even if there is, I'm in the position where I'm my own boss, so to speak, so I can choose to work the weekends, like this weekend, for example. Last weekend, I decided not to work at all. I had that choice. I was able to have that choice, but also the more I put in, I'm building something. I'm building a business. I'm building something for me here. It's different. It's seen differently, and it's appreciated differently if you're building something for someone else. Some people like building something for someone else. People want that confidence. People want that, compassion, or they want that security of having a job. Okay, fine, fair enough. You've got to make your own decisions. You've got to be comfortable with what you do specifically. But for me, I've always been like, well, if I can do this, why can't I do this thing that's further away, right? So using the money example, if I can turn over 10 grand, okay, well, why can't I turn over 50 grand or 100 grand, right? It's not that hard. If I can work out how to do 10, why can't I work out how to do 50 or 100?
So the first thing is that you've got to have the idea, but what trips people up is that they then don't have the knowledge or the support network. So we talk about there's lots of clever sort of psychological models that you wouldn't be able to take in, because it would be boring and academic, and it would be black and white words on a page. But we use a thing called the identity iceberg as a metaphor for explaining how this works. So normally, if we had a bit more time, I'd ask you to guess how much of an iceberg is above the surface, but it's about 10%. Apparently, I thought it was a third, but it's about 10%. So the bit that you see at the top of the iceberg, the results that you get come from your decisions, your actions, and behaviors. But below the surface, the thing that people can't see is all of that wiring and all that internal belief stuff that's holding you back or pushing you forward. So that is very, very significantly affected by the environment, the people that you hang around with, and the places that you are. So as we've gone into this COVID-19 crisis around the world, and we've had lockdown, it's been absolutely catastrophic for people, because the huge change to the environment works on your beliefs, your values, and everything else that's below that waterline. And that has a 9-to-1 effect on the results that you achieve. So if you were in the events industry and all of a sudden the government says you can't do that anymore, your identity is taken away from you, because you were the person who organized big events in the city, or you were a
The
somebody who
Christmas markets,
did walking tours,
the International Art
all of
Festival,
that stuff. So
the dancing, whatever it may be.
the first thing is when we work with people, is that we explain all of these generalized principles of success, and it allows you to make sense of what situation you're in and give you that sense of control back. Because if you haven't got control, you suffer from anxiety and stress. You wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you think, shit, I've got no money to pay the bills this week, or whatever the thing is that's waking you up. I'm worried about the planet, I'm worried about the amount of plastic in the ocean, whatever it is. So when you get solid on your processes that help you to reprogram yourself and to achieve the things that you want in life, you become incredibly confident. It's a bit like learning kung fu. You go through the polish on, polish off phase and painting the fence, and eventually you don't need to do kung fu anymore, because you look as though you can carry yourself reasonably well and you're not intimidated by other people. So the law of procession is one of those generalized principles. If you focus on, I want to be the wealthiest man in Salisbury, you ain't going to get there, because it's the wrong goal. If you focus on helping as many people as you can in Salisbury, then the act of focusing on helping as many people as possible will give you that thing at 90 degrees, going off at tangents. This is a great example of a tangent, is the law of procession. So you focus on that one thing, but you get this unintended consequence over here that is the result of the activity that you're doing. So just to finish off on your, how do we double the economy? Because that's a really, important thing that we should talk about, particularly after Novichok and particularly after, coming out of lockdown. We have something for everybody that's interested in business. So whether you're at school studying business, or you just come out of a technical college and you want to set a business up as a plumber, a plasterer, a hairdresser, a videographer, or somebody doing SEO, it doesn't matter. We've got a book club. So in normal times, once a month, we get together in a pub in Salisbury. We have some social, so you've got an opportunity to mix with the people. You're not sat at home doing this in your bedroom. We study a book that is going to be useful to you to develop your business skills and work on that B times do equals have. And a great example of a book to read would be The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, which is one of the first ones that we often look at, or Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So book club is the first step on that ladder to becoming a very, very different and more successful person in any form of life. So book club is where it starts. Then for the solopreneurs, the next rung on the ladder is a thing called Profit Club. So Profit Club, we get together twice a month and we focus on marketing and sales, because at that stage, you need to get more sales and you need to get more money in order to hire people and get the equipment and the systems in place. From Profit Club, people grow into Action Club, which is the flagship group coaching session that we offer. That's fortnightly, but it's a little bit longer in time. And typically that's for businesses that are a little bit more established, maybe 5 years in business, maybe 500,000 turnover and a dozen staff would be a good place for people to get an Action Club. And then beyond that, we go into one-to-one coaching fortnightly or weekly, and we get into board coaching and executive coaching. So there's something for everybody. And if you're listening to this and you're a business owner, a really great place to start is to come along to one of our quarterly growth clubs. So the growth club, we help you to put together a 90-day plan to teach you the process of setting and achieving goals and working on your self-discipline, because there are 4 foundational things that you need to get your business up and running. And these 4 things are destination mastery, so understanding where the hell you're headed, and putting some clarity around that. So written goals around where you want to get to. So get your destination clear. Time mastery. We all get 24 hours a day. If you haven't got a destination, it's really hard for you to make choices. Do I do this or do I do that? So self-discipline and managing your time really well is key. Delivery mastery. How do you make sure that your customers get a consistent experience each time they shop with you? And ideally, that you're delighting them so they tell some other people, and that reduces your marketing cost. So destination, time, delivery. And the fourth thing is financial mastery, which extends to other key performance indicators. But how are you keeping score of the things that are most important in your business so that you know that the things that you're doing are the right things, or you might have to change? So on that foundation of those four things, destination, time, delivery, and financial mastery, we then build the marketing engine. And the marketing engine is the 5 ways that I talked about before. So number of leads, conversion rate, average pound sale, number of transactions, and gross profit. And then we bolt onto that your unique selling proposition and some form of guarantee. Because when people want to come to Brunton Media and say, hey, Carlton, I've looked at 30 different companies that can do videography for me. What is it about your business that's going to make me choose you? So there's two key elements there. One is the guarantee, because the guarantee helps people get through the change equation, which is something else we teach. Dissatisfaction multiplied by vision plus first steps has got to be greater than the resistance to change. So having a guarantee makes it easier for people to take that first step, because it's less of a leap. It's a smaller commitment. So getting your guarantee right and having a unique selling proposition that differentiates you from everybody else means that you're then not competing on price. Because if a customer is looking at videographers and there's 10 of them, or people to do a podcast with, and there's 10 of them, and they look at their website and it doesn't pass the grunt test, it all looks the same, and they're burning a lot of calories to try and read everything that's on there, then they're just going to price shop you, and you're not going to get ahead. So in terms of those 5 ways, you're not going to get your gross profit to improve because you haven't created something that's sufficiently compelling. So we'll often spend maybe 4 to 6 weeks with a coaching client, really drilling into that unique selling proposition so that you are differentiated and able to get the most return on your time for the thing that you're selling. And people often say, my business isn't like that. I'm a roofer. I just sell logs or whatever it is. There's always a way. And it comes from...
There's always something, yeah. There's always something. There's always something that you do, or maybe it's the fact that you are so personal, or you take the extra time, or whatever it is, right? Like, it's every single business has a unique selling point. Do you necessarily understand it and appreciate it? Maybe not, but it is there.
I'm gonna leave you with one thought, because I think we're almost out of time. And the reason that people don't develop their unique selling proposition, and the reason that most businesses end up competing on price, is all down to the E-Myth, Michael Gerber's book. So the E-Myth, the principle of it, for those on the podcast that haven't read it, is that an entrepreneur is this sort of Richard Branson type character, flamboyant, great marketer, natural, charismatic. They just magic a business out of thin air and it takes off, and next thing you know, they're a billionaire. Completely not the case. Every business pretty much is started by somebody that is a technician of some sort. They're brilliant at fixing cars. They're brilliant at detailing and washing cars. They're brilliant at whatever it is, videography, creative mind, or whatever it might be. And what happens is if you think of a 3-legged stool, that operational leg, the thing that you enjoy that brings the money in, gets all the attention. I've got loads of mates who are professional musicians. What do they do all day? Play the guitar or the banjo or the fiddle or whatever it might be. They're never doing any marketing and they're not looking at the money. So for your business to be healthy, you've got to discipline yourself to spend time on marketing and business development and looking at the numbers and all the other bits and pieces that a business owner has to do. And what Gerber teaches you to do is to draw the org chart of what your businesses look like when it's finished, and then put some time into those key roles. So as you go through your week, have you blocked a full day in, or equivalent in 2-hour chunks or whatever through the week, to work on lead generation and to work on your sales process? If you talk to most businesses, they haven't. You talk to any accountant in Salisbury, and you say, how much time are you spending on marketing and business development? At best, they've outsourced it. At worst, they're not doing any. And they're in this place of denial where they say things like, oh, we get all our business from referrals. Well, you can't put that in your forecast because you don't know when it's going to happen. So you've basically let go of the reins of the horse, and it's just taking you in whatever direction it's going to go. It might just put its head down and throw you in the hedge because you've sacrificed control. So, every one of us, another principle we teach is the point of power. So Viktor Frankl, who was a famous author, was tortured in the Nazi death camps, wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And I think he was one of the first people who basically articulated this idea. As human beings, we are response able. We can choose a response. When we get any stimulus, something on Twitter triggers you. You can either decide to be happy or sad, or be a keyboard warrior and troll them, or you can just move off and get a cup of tea. So every stimulus that comes in during the course of the day, and there are thousands every hour these days, you can choose to go below the point of power, which is into blame, excuses, and denial. I can't do anything. The government's done this. The economy's ruined, whatever it might be. Nobody's got any money. So that's blame, excuses, and denial. So you've got no movement and momentum there. You're powerless. Whereas above the point of power, you've got ownership, accountability, and responsibility. So I am responsible for everything that's around me now. My bank balance, how I look, the people that I hang out with. I can choose to change any of those things. So responsibility is where it starts. Choose to accept that, life is a mirror. Everything around you is down to you. What will be is up to me, is a thing that somebody like Tony Robbins says. So then above responsibility is accountability. Accountability means keeping score of something. So a good example is, I want to double my business in the next 12 months. Okay, look at your 5 ways numbers. How many leads are you going to have to get each month, each week, each day to get you the number of sales to get to that revenue target? So you write that down, and then you try and hit that target. You don't goof off and do something else. You say, well, I need to do 10 a day. So now am I doing the things that I need to do to get 10 leads a day? So that's the accountable bit. You put yourself on the line and you commit to doing something. And then the last part of that is ownership. So you own your own ship. You decide the direction, and you're responsible and accountable. So if you understand some of these different principles, and this is what we teach at these things like Growth Club, next one, end of May, we begin to give you these models and these processes to make sense of how the world is unfolding around you, and to give you more control and movement and momentum in the right direction. So that's how, when we touch enough businesses in the community and they all start to pick up and develop these new skills, we transform the economy. One example of that, which I'll finish with, conscious of the fact I've just talked non-stop for about an hour. I play music. I play musical instruments. I'm really keen on a genre of music called bluegrass, and I play about 3 different instruments. And for the first 15 years or so, I just taught myself, and I was a pretty good player. And then I started to go to a residential music school once a year in the Cotswold, a thing called Sore Fingers Summer School. You can Google it. And every year they bring these professional musicians over from America, and they have upskilled all the British folk and bluegrass and jazz and blues players that have attended those schools. So 25 years of professional musicians teaching you how to play, you're going to get better. And so what happens is that tuition extends into all the jams that people do at the festivals, and people start to play more complicated music, and they show each other different things that they've learned from the teachers. So it's the same with what we're doing with business. If I can work with a dozen people in Salisbury, let's say the retail people as they're coming back into, growing their business after lockdown, if I can work with half a dozen retailers in the high streets of Salisbury, and their businesses start to really perform, then their friends are going to say to them, what are you doing? Your business seems to be doing really well. So they start to share some of these ideas and this knowledge, and they're providing better customer service, and their products are differentiated, and they've got the marketing nailed, and they're testing and measuring, they're doing all these good things that we teach them. So the quality of the business goes up. So then other businesses come to the area because the high street's buoyant and vibrant and the community's good and the place is clean and tidy and people are energized and excited. And so the whole community then picks up. And then when the whole community picks up, the council gets more money to fix the potholes and unplug the drains. So we don't have rivers running down the roads wearing them out, and we don't have potholes putting holes in your car. So that's what we're trying to achieve here. And it all starts with people taking that first step, which is come along to a free webinar, listen to a podcast like this. And that one little thing just changes your trajectory. And you start to get exposed to different ideas, and then you talk to other people about it, and we get something going. It's like a snowball.
Yeah, so momentum. It's momentum building, and a lot of what I talk about in marketing in general, whenever I do marketing work specifically, is look, we're not looking at what happens right now, right? I could do a promotional video for you, cool, fab, yeah, great, wonderful. But what are we going to follow it up by? Because there's zero point me doing a promotional video if you're not going to follow it up, because you'll gain some momentum and then it will die off because you won't do anything. The account will go dead, or you won't post anything, or etc. That doesn't always mean when I say that you need to hire me to do more videos for you. If that's the choice you want to do, great, go for it, let's do it. But that's not the only choice you have. I'm asking you because I need to know what you're following up with so we can lead on to that through any of the video content we may do or the initial video content we do originally. And I really, really appreciate the time, and I think there's a lot of value being had in this interview as well. So thank you so much for that. But I like to end off the podcast with giving you an opportunity to ask me one question. You only get one. And it could be, or throw in a topic or etc. if you may don't have a question, but it gives the guest an opportunity to kind of, because I've had it in interviews as well where I'm like, I'm dying to ask this person this and this and this, and I don't like being in a position where I can't ask that. So do you have anything that you want to, like, whether that's a topic you want to throw in or a question you want to ask me?
Okay. If you had to choose between Richard Branson and Alan Sugar, Lord Sugar as he's known now, as your business mentor, who would you choose and why?
This is gonna be really simple for me. Richard Branson, and the only reason why is because he's also a dyslexic and I'm a dyslexic, so we'll be able to talk the same language. Right now, this is no disrespect to Lord Sugar. He may be dyslexic, I don't know, but I know for a fact that Mr. Branson is, right? So for me, he could probably do more and help me more than someone else, because I would spend less time having to have a conversation about this is the problems I have with dyslexia and this is how it affects me on a day-to-day basis. It doesn't as much anymore, but that's a separate topic all in itself. Because we would be able to sing from the same hymn sheet in that respect. So, he would be able to do, this is how I overcome these issues that came with me having dyslexia and building a business. Okay, cool. So how can I do that with my business? Maybe the business isn't necessarily going to the same place, but the strategies and the systems and who I employ will be similar. They might do a slightly different job, or we might change what they do specifically so it serves the needs that my company has instead of his company's or his company. But in the systems perspective, it will be identical. But again, correct me if I'm wrong, but from my understanding, it will be.
No, that's a great answer to the question, and it illustrates another principle that we teach, which is the quality of results that you get starts with the quality of the mentor that you have. And choosing somebody on the basis that you've just said makes a huge amount of sense, because you're shortcutting a lot of that communication challenge, and you've got the opportunity to accelerate. So you could choose two different business mentors, and one may have achieved the sorts of things that you want to achieve, but is a terrible communicator. You'll have had a teacher at school who was very academically smart but couldn't explain anything. My maths teacher used to explain everything in terms of fruit, because he was an electrician. Whereas if you had a PhD or somebody who was into pure maths, they might be incredibly clever, but they can't communicate or transfer that knowledge. So the choice of business mentor is pivotal in your success, and you outgrow different people as you move along that journey. So if you want to move faster, you want to find somebody who's got breadth of experience, they've got proven systems, and they've got a broad and comprehensive experience of life and business and everything else in lots of different sectors. And that's what's brought me into what I do now. I've been 35 years in lots of different sectors. I've spent the last 15 years doing turnaround and fixing multi-million-pound turnover businesses all around the world. So bringing all of that knowledge together, now is the time to share that with the people of Salisbury and the people of Wiltshire, and let's get the economy moving and get it up and running. So I'd be delighted if people who are listening to this, if they're still on the podcast now, just drop into our website and take a look at what we do, salisbury.actioncoach.co.uk. And I'd love to see you at a growth club. If you want to come along, hit me up with a message and I'll gift a ticket to you. It's normally something that people have to pay a fee for, but it's more important to me that we connect with people locally and we get some movement and momentum in the city after the challenging 12, 18 months that we've had. So I'll be delighted to speak to anybody. And last thing I'll say, Carlton, is that we gift 5 30-minute coaching sessions a week. So, if people are sitting there saying, well, this sounds great, Brad, but I haven't got any money, then just, get in touch with me. We'll set up a 30-minute Zoom call or a phone call. And, it's not a sales pitch. I'll just coach whatever you're worried about at the moment. And, if it makes sense to do a second one, we'll have a second one. So, don't be shy, get in touch. Let's help each other to succeed and let's get the city going.
Absolutely. No, and I normally do a little outro spiel, but I'm going to leave it on that because I think that's a great message to end on. So thank you ever so much.
Great stuff. Have a fantastic weekend. And the one question that I didn't ask you is how you keep your good looks, but we'll do that for the next time, eh?
Thank you so much, ladies and gents, for joining me once again. I hope you did enjoy that podcast. I personally took a lot of value from it in regards to structuring and seeing it from a more corporate-esque, but also quite close to, starting out business owner. And I think there's a lot of actionable advice that you can take from this podcast. I hope you agree. I'd love to hear what you think in the comment section down below. I'll be back very, very soon with some new content, talking about new things that are going to be valuable to you and your business and your audience growth objectives and those kind of things. So thank you so much once again. If you're new to the channel and you want to see more like this, I produce a weekly talk show every single week. So make sure to be subscribed if you don't want to miss next week. And I'll see you very, very soon.